Hello, this is Old Carnivore Steve. And if you haven't been to this channel before, welcome. This is based primarily on my experience with the carnivore diet and the many, many benefits that I've gotten from it. But in no way am I promoting this diet for other people. It's just my personal experience and what works for me, and it's worked very well. Excellent, as a matter of fact. But today, what I wanted to talk to you about are what foods that I think are best on the carnivore diet and what foods that you have to be very careful about. When I went on the carnivore diet, I was primarily strict beef and grass-fed steaks. And I believe this is probably the healthiest. I think when you go to steaks that aren't grass-fed and grass-finished, or meat that is not grass-fed and grass-finished, the problem with it is they have a very high ratio of omega-6 oils to omega-3. And from what I understand, the ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 should be about 4-to-1 in a normal diet, in a healthy diet. But in the average American diet, it gets up around 30 to 40-to-1. And they consider this very inflammatory, and it's the reason for a lot of diseases. And it's one of the reasons that we recommend on the carnivore diet that you try to stick to grass-fed and grass-finished. Well, there is another reason. And the other reason is something called ractopamine. And many people aren't familiar with this and have never heard about ractopamine. But ractopamine is a chemical deemed safe by the FDA, by the way, which they put in, they started back around 2000 putting it in pigs, and then later it was approved for cattle, and now it's in turkeys also. And what this does is it makes the meat very lean. And the meat to fat ratio goes up tremendously, and it makes the animals much heavier, but yet with less fat, which is part of the American diet. They've been saying that fat has been bad for you all these years, where we know it's not bad for you now, unless it's vegetable oils. Now, ractopamine, deemed safe by the FDA, by the way, although when they started using it in pigs, many of the pigs got ill, and some of them even died. The FDA got tons of reports of this happening. But again, they deemed it was safe. However, for some reason, the European Union, Russia, China, Taiwan, all banned that drug. So hopefully, if you are getting grass-fed, pasture-raised animals, which you should strive to get, they don't have ractopamine in it. And I believe it's much healthier. Why does half the world ban this drug if it's so safe? Some of the companies in the United States, because of the tremendous amount of pork that China buys, have stopped using ractopamine so they can export to China. So the Chinese are getting what I call real pork, or at least unadulterated pork, and it's much healthier. Now, if you don't have any choice and you want to keep your budget down, and many of the doctors out there who support carnivores say just eat meat, any kind of meat, and it's okay. And it is. I mean, if you're 100 pounds overweight and you've got health problems, one of the things is eating meat will help reduce that problem. I would suggest that when possible, you try to get farm-grown animals that are pasture-raised whenever possible. I found that my personal experience, because I stuck to the lion diet and ate primarily grass-fed, grass-finished beef, that the results I got on the carnivore diet were fairly rapid and long-lasting. And by rapid, I mean pretty much in 2 or 3 weeks, I got rid of, if you watch my original video, about 20 really bad problems. Problems that would probably have killed me in another year if I didn't go on the carnivore diet. So, again, I recommend those foods. Now, you can get, hamburger. You can even get some processed foods like sausages, if you read the label very carefully, and hot dogs that are all beef hot dogs, and they don't have sugar in them and they don't have preservatives. They're a little difficult to find, but they are out there. And many times, if you're in a larger city and they have butchers that process their own meat, they process it the way they did in the old country, and a lot of it is very good. Although I did go to a local butcher here, and I wanted to get some sausage, and I found out that, hey, he put sugar in his sausage. It's one thing you have to be very careful about. If you read the ingredients on anything nowadays, it's got sugar in it, Sugar bacon? Well, yeah, it's got sugar in it. What is the one? The honey lamb or honey baked ham. So, got a lot of sweetness and it, a lot of sugar. They put sugar in just about everything, or sweeteners. I mean, sometimes it's covered up with different names like maltose or dextrose, but they have artificial sweeteners in them, and this is one of the worst things you could do on the carnivore diet. And the other thing I found is coffee. Now, there are a lot of carnivores who love coffee and say coffee's perfectly fine. Well, coffee for me, I found out that and I love coffee, I have to have my morning pot or two. And I've been doing it for 60 years. So I used to drink a lot of coffee. And I still, even on the carnivore diet, after I was feeling pretty good, initially I quit the coffee, but then I started drinking it again, and I found that on average it drove up my blood pressure about 15 points. My systolic pressure would go from about 115 to about 130. And I don't think 130 is bad for somebody my age. It wasn't so many years ago when they said anything lower than 140 and the systolic was pretty good. Now, if you have to, I would suggest that, you try a tea like green tea, which they claim is very healthy for you. As far as the carnivore diet goes and the benefits of the diet, I mean, you go on the internet and look at all these YouTube doctors out there. You can find any kind of diet you want, and they're extolling the benefits of it from, vegetarian and carnivore and fruit. Anything you want to eat, you can find support for. What I do is what works for me, and that's been the carnivore diet. Now, there is this guy out there who I find very convincing, but it doesn't work for me. And his name is Dr. William Lee. And he spells Lee L-I, so it's Dr. Lee. And he's a physician that does biological research, and he claims that he helped develop, I don't know, half a dozen or a dozen cancer drugs. And naturally, because of cancer, if you've listened to me before about tumors, there's something called angiogenesis, which when you get a tumor, it develops and grows its own blood veins. And that's called angiogenesis. Well, this particular guy started a foundation of angiogenesis, and so he's the president and the founder of it. And he's supposed to be the resident expert, but he is a vegetarian fruit proponent, and you know what a lot of the doctors recommend on the old diet. So you might want to look him up just for point of reference. But again, I do what works for me. So pretty much that's all I have to say about the coffee and meat. And if you found this interesting, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already subscribed. And kind of look forward to seeing you again and coming up with some maybe interesting information. So goodbye until I see you again.